Hey, what's going on, guys? So, for a while now, I've been in a real Superman mood. I was just before the movie came out, and then the movie came out, and I've been in even more of a Superman mood. So, I've just been wanting to read and talk about Superman comics. And the big thing that I was reading was Grant Morrison and Rags Morales' New 52 Action Comic series. In fact, I've been planning on making a video about that book for quite some time. But then I saw that Owen Likes Comics retrospective, and I'm not gonna lie, I felt like Adam 22 if that dude had any sense of shame. Like, I just shoved all of my trades of that run in the back of my bookshelf. I texted Grant Morrison that it wasn't gonna work out, and I plan on filing for divorce next week. Owen's video was that good. Be that as it may, I was still in a Superman mood, and again, I wanted to read some Superman comics and talk about them on the channel. And then I remembered that I own the first 5 volumes of the Golden Age Superman reprints that DC put out a while back, because I snatched them up when I worked at a comic book store, and then I just put them on my bookshelf to rot because, once again, I'm a real comic book fan, and then I buy comics and don't read them. So this past week, I sat down and actually started reading through the first volume, and where do I even begin? I have often described Golden Age Superman as being one part John Carter, one part Luigi Mangione, which I maintain is a fairly accurate depiction of the character, but it's one thing to know that intellectually, based off reputation and having read a few disparate issues here and there, but it's another to actually sit down and read these comics issue to issue, because Golden Age Superman is completely unhinged. So, Superman was originally conceived as a blue-collar socialist power fantasy, and Superman's whole thing was that he was essentially a bully to the world's bullies. These stories are less centered around Superman fighting supervillains as much as they are Superman fighting institutions. Casinos, mobsters, war profiteering, worker neglect, and just general poverty. Anything that serves as a threat against the common man is dealt with by Superman. Usually by force and just manhandling the absolute fuck out of somebody, because that's the thing with original recipe Superman. He's not one to give speeches and monologue about hopes and dreams and how they save us. No, this guy, if you're lucky, offers ultimatums. Stop being an asshole or I will literally... Which is so jarring to read after coming off of James Gunn's all-star Superman American Alien for all seasons, because this is a Superman with a very might makes right kind of attitude. So that, coupled with a righteous sense of anger and indignation, that it's just a winning combination that just leads to this Superman going on these Doom Eternal style rampages. That said, there has been one reoccurring surviving supervillain in the book so far, not for lack of trying on Superman's part, and that's been the Ultra Humanite, of course, the first official supervillain in, I guess, comic book history. I was going to say DC history, but I think it's just comics in general. But I don't know, he's basically just a proto-Lex Luthor. He's a bald, asshole, mad scientist with these vague take-over-the-world type schemes, but none of them really make sense. I don't get what taking over the Metropolis taxi service has to do with world domination, but go off, King. And a lot of the Ultra Humanite stories are just plot twists for the sake of having a plot twist. And I haven't gotten to them yet in this read-through, but from what I remember, Lex Luthor is just a vast improvement on what Siegel and Schuster are going for with Ultra, because as is, Golden Age Superman has been far more enjoyable without the supervillain element, I think. One of my favorite issues so far has to be Action Comics issue 12, where Clark Kent witnesses a car accident, and because Metropolis is home to 30 people, which, to be fair, is the case with the current DC Comics continuity version of Metropolis as well, the victim is somebody that Clark Kent knows. So Clark calls the mayor to complain about how everyone in the city is a bad driver, and after the mayor just blows off this random dipshit reporter, Clark changes into Superman, and I swear to God, he forces his way into a nearby radio station like he's Robert Pattinson's Batman going into the Iceberg Lounge, bursts into the recording studio, and hijacks the show, and basically threatens to kill everyone who's a bad driver. And then he goes on a warpath, destroying impounded vehicles and police parking lots. He completely destroys a used car dealership because the used cars are all defective. He threatens to kill a drunk driver by throwing his car off a bridge. And then finally, he goes to an auto factory and he's like, statistically speaking, your cars are involved in more accidents than any other car. And then he just destroys the factory with everybody still in it.
What? Okay. This sounds so much worse than it actually is.
Another issue that I really liked was actually a really early one. It's Action Comics issue 3. There's a collapse in a coal mine, and one of the miners is critically injured, so Clark Kent goes to interview him, and he asks if there was any way to prevent the cave-in. And the miner's like, yeah, of course there was, but I'm an expendable laborer, so if I complain, I get fired, and if I get fired, I can't feed my family. So Clark's solution is to dress up as one of the miners, go to the foreman's manor where he's hosting a dinner party, trick the foreman of the mine who is drunk off his ass with all of his rich asshole out-of-touch buddies into staging a tour of his dangerously unsafe mine, and once everyone's down there, Superman just takes advantage of the poor structures and traps everyone in the mine and then forces them to dig their way out. And that's more or less Golden Age Superman in a nutshell. Clark Kent discovers a problem, changes into Superman, and then proceeds to just manhandle the absolute fuck out of the problem until it doesn't exist anymore, or once some sort of justice has been served. Like I said, Golden Age Superman has a very might makes right kind of attitude, which is interesting to read because it's so off base from the post Christopher Reeve smile and wave hope core Superman that's dominated so much of the character's pop culture image. That said, you do see elements of Golden Age Superman here and there in modern comics, and there's sometimes deep pull callbacks to Golden Age Superman moments where, he'll snatch up a gun out of somebody's hand and start eating it, or, he pulls some prank invasion type super dickery, but you would never see a modern iteration of the character under an official DC Comics project. Literally roofie a man, take his place on a football team, and then proceed to basically win a football championship single-handedly while dealing out lifelong injuries to players of the rival team because he overheard a sabotage plot from the rival team's coach.
Superman!
I will say, reading this made me appreciate pre-crisis Lois Lane a little more. Lois is a character who I think her pre-crisis counterpart, for the most part, is pretty unfucking likable. I cannot stand pre-crisis Lois Lane. She's just a shallow Superman groupie whose entire personality is wanting to fuck Superman while shitting on Clark Kent.
You thirsty bitch?
Now, be that as it may, within the context of these Golden Age stories, given how unhinged Clark himself is in these comics, Lois feels not so out of place in the same way that she does when reading 70s or early 80s era Superman comics. In fact, their whole dynamic, because of the unhinged comedic nature of the series, reads like Wojak, where you have Clark as the Virgin, but Superman is the Chad, and Lois is the Stacy, which, to be fair, Silver Age and Bronze Age comics were similarly unhinged, but I don't know, I guess it's just because of how cynical these Golden Age stories are, that biting humor just hits a little better in my opinion. But that's just me. But yeah, Golden Age Superman has been a lot of fun to read lately, and I know from the Superman fandom there's been a little trepidation when it comes to the idea of Superman going public domain, because that's coming up the next couple of years. Because every character that seems to go into the public domain just winds up in one of these shitty-ass, uninspired slasher flick horror movies. But hear me out. I can totally see a superhero horror movie based on Golden Age Superman, with the criminals being the main characters and Superman as the monster. That is 100% a thing that I can visualize, and I'm not sure if anyone else remembers this, but there was a YouTube short film called The Flying Man, and you follow these gun runners who are trying to finish a job All the while, there's a mysterious flying vigilante just straight up murdering scores of mobsters and gangsters. And, you know, one of the guys who's the main character is constantly looking over his shoulder because he's paranoid that the flying man is watching them. Like, I can totally see that being a public domain Superman movie plot, you know? Especially given the fact that when Superman does go public domain, it'll specifically be this version of the character, and not the Smile and Wave Hope Corps Starman version of the character. And I'd be okay with that, because not only would it be a nice change of pace, but I don't know, like, just reading this felt cathartic, especially given a lot of the current events, both foreign and domestic. And it was interesting seeing just how relevant a lot of these stories still felt, despite being written and drawn close to 100 years ago. But I guess that just goes to show that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Which is why I guess it's called the never-ending battle. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Golden Age Superman. I think these stories were a lot of fun. And again, they're very anti-establishment, and it's a very punk rock take on Superman. But not in the, I think kindness is punk rock kind of way. It's more so in the grab a billionaire by the collar and throw them into the sun while making an off-color joke about how they should have learned from Icarus kind of punk rock. Which, if that's what you're into, I couldn't recommend this highly enough, especially if you have a fascination with older comics. But what about you? Have you read Golden Age Superman? Would you like to see DC do more with this take on the character? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel. And if you want to see more content like this, all you gotta do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, take care, guys.
Peace.